Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping items to ensure that our session runs smoothly. All attendees will remain muted and off camera during this webinar. We encourage you to engage with us throughout the webinar. Feel free to use the chat feature to share your thoughts, reactions, and comments with the group. Just be sure to select everyone if you want all participants to see your message. If you have any questions for our presenters, please post them in the Q&A section rather than the chat. This will allow us to keep track of all questions and ensure they are addressed during the Q&A portion at the end. Please note that this session is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube page following the event. We hope that you enjoy tonight's webinar. Now I will turn it over to our host to get us started. Regina, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's Live Well webinar, Hope in the Dark, Understanding and Preventing Suicide. I bring you greetings from Jackson Miss Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm Regina Wilcox Lewis, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator for this critical conversation about mental health, hope, and suicide prevention. Suicide is a deeply painful and often misunderstood topic, but it is one we must confront together with compassion, empathy, and a commitment to understanding. So before we get started tonight, because we have some amazing presenters tonight, I want to pose two questions in the chat. So if you would, I want you to answer the following questions. The first one is, in the chat, to put a number 1 if someone close to you has attempted suicide. If someone close to you has attempted suicide. In the chat, I want you to put a number 2 if someone close to you has completed suicide, meaning they're no longer here with you. 1, if you know someone who has attempted suicide but wasn't successful. And a 2, if you know someone close to you who has completed suicide. And I see a lot of responses in the chat, a lot of 1s and a lot of 2s. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on, but I want you all to continue to put those responses in the chat for me, please. So thank you all so much for your responses. Again, suicide is a deeply painful and often misunderstood topic, and many of us have been affected by this in some way or another. So our goal today is to shine a light on the darkness that so many individuals feel, and to equip ourselves. Each one of us needs to be equipped with the tools, the knowledge, and the strategies to help prevent suicide and to promote hope. Tonight, we're going to explore the root causes of suicidal thoughts, discuss ways to identify warning signs, because if you may not know this, but there are a lot of warning signs that so many of us ignore when people around us are suffering in silence. And most importantly, we need to learn how we can support those who are in crisis. Every life, every single life is valuable, and every person struggling deserves to be heard. They deserve to be supported and guided toward hope and healing. So thank you all for being here and for caring about this life-saving work. Your presence and your participation today can truly make a difference in your community and in the lives of those who may be silently struggling. Let's work together to foster a world where hope prevails even in the darkest moments. So now I want to introduce our first presenter. Her name is Dr. Barbara L. Taps. She is a doctoral prepared family and psychiatric and mental health nurse practitioner with over 33 years of nursing experiences. Dr. Taps earned her degrees from the University of Mississippi Medical Center, Mississippi University for Women, the University of Southern Miss, and Chamberlain University School of Nursing. She is currently employed by Oak Street Health in Jackson, Mississippi, where she provides mental health care to Medicare beneficiaries, and she works with Marion Counseling Services, where she provides mental health care to patients of all ages. In her spare time, she enjoys presenting at conferences on various nursing and mental health topics, as well as mentoring aspiring nurses and young adults. Her favorite quote is by Les Brown: "Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you will land amongst the stars." Dr. Barbara L. Taps, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Regina. I am so honored to be here tonight, and I applaud Jackson, Mississippi Alumni Chapter for having this topic. It's much needed to be discussed. It has so much stigma attached to it, so I'm honored to be part of this presentation. So in this presentation, I'll jump right into it. We're going to talk about suicide, but most importantly, suicide prevention. We cannot always prevent or remove suffering and pain that our loved ones have, but we can attempt to cultivate hope and support resiliency by learning more about suicide and how to help those we care about and find their reasons and purpose for living. So I'll talk about clues and behaviors known as warning signs. We'll talk about risk factors, something that you might see or indicate someone may be thinking about suicide, and what you can do to help that person, and how to actually have that difficult conversation with them and offer them resources. Next slide, please. So as with anything, you have statistics. And so always statistics are a couple of years behind. So as of right now, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. That's overall, but it is the 3rd leading cause of death in age groups 15 to 29-year-olds. In 2022, there were almost 50,000 people who died by suicide. And after COVID, those numbers increased. And so now we've seen a larger number of over 700,000 people who have died by suicide. Also, in 2022, there was an estimated 1.6 million attempted suicide. And that's a large number, but keep in mind, every attempt is not reported. So even though you may see that number 1.6 million, there is probably no telling how many others are attempted, and that is alarming. Men die by suicide over 3 times more than women. White males account for over 68% of suicide deaths in 2022, and firearms accounted for over 54%, almost 55% of all suicide deaths. But what's interesting is when adults, 94% of adults surveyed when asked about suicide, think that suicide can be prevented. And so if they think it can be prevented, then we wonder, why are the numbers so high? So let's talk about that. Next slide, please. So as this is the judgment-free zone, So these are just some questions that I want you to keep in mind, and you can put your answer in the chat if you know it. And if not, by the end of this presentation, you will know this information. So what are 3 critical warning signs of suicide? True or false? You should never ask someone if they're thinking about suicide. What are 3 ways we can help someone who is having thoughts of suicides? And then you need to know at least 2 prevention suicide resources for people that they can reach someone 24/7. Next slide, please. So some common questions that people ask themselves about suicide, and the number one is suicide preventable? And you'll hear me say over and over, suicide is very preventable. We just have to get to know the warning signs and the risk factors so that we can help someone with that. And so again, how do you know someone may be suicidal? We're going to talk about those signs, warning signs, and risk factors. And then what do you do if you feel like somebody is there? How can you help them? What resources can you give them? What resources are available? And you have to arm yourself with those knowledge so that you can help people when they are in crisis. Next slide, please. So what causes suicide? When you think about what causes suicide, a lot of us and a lot of people always want to know why, the what, the when, the how. But when you're looking at suicide, we have to keep in mind that there is no one cause. The causes are very complex with suicide. And actually looking for one particular answer there's a danger to oversimplifying the causes of suicide. And so when you think about it, you might want to say, okay, well, I hear that some common causes of suicide can be mental illness. Well, that is true. Another common cause may be somebody who served in the military from PTSD and things like that. And even with our young people, one of the main causes that we hear is because of bullying in school. And so while those are causes, we still don't want to simplify that, because when we do that, we kind of put on suicide like it's a normal response to things that people are going through. And so by making it seem like it's normal, it may discourage people from actually seeking out help for themselves or seeking out help for someone else. It can make suicide seem that it's inevitable whenever a specific factor is present. And so we don't want to do that, because that conveys a message that there is no hope for recovery. And so that's not what we're trying to put across. I also want you to know that most people who experience risk factors or they don't die by suicide. Most people who have risk factors do not die by suicide. So even though it's complex, most people do live with their factors and they try to get them better so that they will not be in that risk category. Next slide, please. So historically, and even more so today, suicide carries a lot of stigma, a lot of prejudice, a lot of fear when it comes to suicide. People who are thinking about suicide are often hesitant to tell someone about their thoughts. They're hesitant to reach out for help because of the fear of what comes along with suicide and even mental health. They may often be worried about how it's going to affect their family, how it's going to affect their relationships, and a lot of times how it's going to affect their employment. They don't want to be a burden to family members, so they keep everything bottled up inside. And so while you can't see pain, we can't actually see the pain that people are going through. Sometimes we can see that they are having some issues, but we can't see the intense emotional pain that they're having. We can't see the intense physical pain that they're having. So a lot of times we don't know exactly what they're going through, and we don't know their thoughts. But I want you to keep in mind that people who are suicidal don't necessarily want to die as much as they don't want to go living with their pain. So it's not that they just really don't want to be here. They just don't know how to live with what they have going on. They don't know how to live with the pain that they're having. And so remember that not wanting to live is totally different from not wanting to die. So we just have to help them find ways to cope with the pain that they're having and things of that nature. We can also reduce the stigma and fear around suicide by basically increasing our knowledge and educating others and feeling more confident to talk about the situation and talk about suicide when we are talking to our loved ones. We just need to know what to say and how to say it, because the more we understand about suicide, the more we can help them when they're struggling. Next slide, please. And so I want you to understand that when we talk about suicide and stigma and mental health and all these other things, there are just words that we should not use, and we just need to clarify some recommended terminology. So when it comes to suicide, words really matter. And so we don't want to use the word committed, that they committed suicide. That's an old term that we use. And when you use the word committed, it kind of conveys a crime or a sin of some sort, or somebody has done something wrong. And so that adds to the stigma, that adds to the shame and the guilt, even for the family members or the survivors of the person who actually died by suicide. So versus saying committed suicide, we want to say that person died by suicide, or that they took their own life. And that kind of decreases some of the stigma or the negativity attached to that word committed. Also, we don't want to say successful or unsuccessful, because when it comes to suicide, there is nothing successful about any of that. So, rather than saying a successful suicide, we want to say that they died by suicide or they took their own life. Rather than saying unsuccessful suicide, we want to say that they attempted suicide. And that those words just kind of take away that stigma to that. Next slide, please. So is suicide preventable? Again, yes, it is. How can we prevent suicide? Number one is knowing the warning signs, and we're going to talk about those shortly. And so once you know the warning signs, you want to make sure that your loved one or the person that you're thinking or having those thoughts, that you ask them directly. It is okay and it's best to directly ask somebody, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about harming yourself? Let's talk about it. And once you do that, and we're going to talk about what to do if they say yes, or yes if they say no. But one of the main things is to make a safety plan. You want to find out what means do they have at home. Do they have any kind of lethal means, such as a gun or medication or anything like that? Because you want to remove those things. You want to also make a do no harm contract with them. If they are saying that they're thinking about it, you want to ask them, can they promise you they won't do anything to themselves? And sometimes they'll say yes and sometimes they'll say no. But 9 times out of 10, when they tell you, no, I won't do anything, they stick to that. And so that's one of those things that you definitely want to ask them. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you are connecting them with the proper mental health professionals that they need to see, not only just mental health, but they need to see someone who is actually trained in suicide prevention treatment, because there's a lot of therapy that's needed once that attempt has been made. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the warning signs and the risk factors. There's a big difference between the warning signs and the risk factors. So we'll talk about risk factors first. So when you think about risk factors, you think about long-term population level factors that are associated with the risk. Now, risk do not mean that they are going to actually attempt suicide or that they're going to die by suicide. You can have risk factors and the things not happen. And for example, someone who has heart disease or someone who's at risk for a heart attack can have heart disease. They can be overweight. They can have a bad diet and things like that. But just because those risk factors are there, it does not mean that they're going to actually have a heart attack. And so you have to think about suicide the same way. So a person who has risk factors, even though those risk factors are there, it does not mean that they're going to actually attempt suicide. And so some known risk factors, it can be academic pressures, when children go off to college or even in elementary school and things like that. People who have already had a loved one who has either attempted suicide or died by suicide. If they've had a previous suicide attempt, it places them at risk. Things like family dysfunction, bullying, any type of abuse, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, all those types of abuse puts a person at a higher risk for risk factors. People with low self-esteem or, low self-worth, and definitely some of these relationship issues, domestic violence and things like that, PTSD, those are risk factors. But your higher risk population includes the Native Americans, Caucasians, LGBTQ populations, men, military families, and even the perfectionists. Now, just because these are your higher risk population does not mean that you won't see suicide attempts or suicide at all in these other populations. These are just the populations that are higher that you may see that in. And then your warning signs are just behaviors that you will see or emotional clues that you will see that may indicate suicidal intent. Next slide, please. So we have critical warning signs. And these are, when I say critical warning signs, These are signs that when you see these signs, you need to be sitting on go, ready to go, jumping, ready to go. And so that's why you need to have your resources that you need to offer for support before you even attempt to ask the person what's going on. So some critical warning signs are threatening to kill themselves, talking about wanting to kill themselves, or anything like that. You definitely need to not leave them by themselves and get them some help immediately at that point. They may be mad at you, but hey, you just got to do it. Making plans for suicide, looking for ways to kill themselves. Like if you know this person has never had a gun before and now they've purchased a gun, then that's a sign. If just stockpiling medication, getting medication and just keeping and holding on to them, because taking pills is a very common way of suicide attempt. So things like that. People who you normally don't talk about things like death or dying or suicide or things like that. These are people that that's a warning sign when they're posting on social media talking about death and, watching movies about death, posting pictures about death. These are people that you really need to watch and see what's going on with them, because that is a sign, especially if it's out of their ordinary persona for them. And then you'll see people a lot of times give away their belongings, like valuables, things that that mean something to them. They'll start giving away things. When you see these signs, these are critical warning signs, and you need to immediately get on the phone call somebody, get them somewhere so that they can be taken care of, because if you leave those people, when you start seeing those signs, they may attempt suicide at that time. Next slide, please. Some other warning signs include hopelessness, worthless, people who are in pain, especially physical pain and emotional pain, and they feel trapped, like they can't get out of it. Those are warning signs. Extreme mood swings, withdrawal, isolation. And one very common one you'll see, if you know that somebody has been sad for quite a while, or they've been depressed for quite a while, and all of a sudden they get happy, they start doing things, they start skipping, they start singing, and nothing in their situation has changed. Everything is still the same that you know of, but now all of a sudden they're happy. That is a warning sign. That is something that you need to dig into and see what's going on with them. And people who are sleeping too much or too little, who don't want to come out of the house, now they've increased substance use, especially alcohol. These are the people that you want to really pay attention to. They're not critical warning signs, but they are warning signs that you need to pay attention to. Next slide, please. So when you're getting ready to have the conversation, and again, remember I said that you have to ask a person directly, are you thinking about suicide? There is nothing wrong with asking that question. It is not going to increase suicidal intent. But before you have that conversation, you got to get yourself together, because it is a very sticky conversation. It is a very uncomfortable place to be in, a very uncomfortable situation for yourself as well as them. So you want to make sure that you're in a calm, safe environment, but not just for yourself, but for them as well. You want to make sure that you're taking some deep breaths, because you don't want to be rushed. You don't want them to feel rushed. And so once you begin the conversation, they may begin to talk. They may begin to tell you things. So you want to make sure that you're listening more than you talk, because that may be the door that they need to help get them on another path. And make sure that you have your resources available for them. But at the end of the day, make sure you have support for yourself. Make sure that you have someone that you can talk to, because you may hear some things that may really disturb you. So you're going to need some support for yourself. Next slide, please. So when you start the conversation, you're going to be very direct, but you want to come across first, asking them what's going on with them, because once, when you do this, it's going to make them feel like that you care, that you're concerned, and so you're going to let them know that you're noticing some things different in them and their behavior. And so this is just an example, fictional characters, and you might say something like, Shay, it's not like you to avoid us, your friends and your family and events. I've noticed that you've been isolated. So I'm really concerned about that. And I heard something else. I heard that you said earlier today that you may not be around for Jay's wedding. And I know we've been planning Jay's wedding and you've been so excited. And now you're not you don't seem to be excited about it. Can you tell me what's going on? So starting the conversation from this standpoint kind of opens the door for them to let them know that you are watching it, that something is wrong. Next slide, please. So it is best to be direct. You want to ask them for certain, are you thinking about suicide? Do you have a plan? You know, when do you feel pain most? What leads you to think about suicide? And again, talking about suicide does not increase suicidal behavior. It just lets them know that you care about them and you want to help them in their situation. Next slide, please. So what happens if they say no? If you ask them, are they thinking about suicide, and they say no, you want to make sure that you're encouraging them to talk about how they're feeling. You want to be supportive. You want to ask them what makes them feel better, encouraging them to reach out for help, mental health, and things like that. And again, you want to make sure that you're listening without judgment. It's a judgment-free zone, because once you start lecturing or judging them, they're going to stop talking. And if they say no, you're just going to make sure that you know, let them know that you know what's going on, you're watching them, and that you're going to continue to check on them frequently so that they'll know that. Next slide, please. If they say yes, make sure that you take it very serious. It is very serious, but you have to remain calm. You can't get freak all out. You have to remain calm. Thank them for their honesty with them. Let them know that you care about them. Encourage them to talk about why they feel this way. And again, the main thing is to listen to what they have to say. And then let them know that you have to reach out for help for them, and let them know that you're there and you'll make the call with them, or you will go with them where they need to go get some help for that. That is one of the main things, to let them know that you're there for them. Next slide, please. So who do you call? So of course, the 988 Lifeline call, they can text it, they can chat, they can just dial it from their phone. And then also the suicide prevention line is the 1-800 number, 273-TALK. Next slide. So from some protective factors, making sure that they have access to effective behavioral health care, making sure that they're connected to family, friends, community, social institution, helping them get their life skills together, including problem solving and coping skills and things like that, helping them find ways to increase their self-esteem, finding a sense of purpose in life. You know, what is their purpose? What are they supposed to be doing? And then, as everybody has a cultural or religious or personal beliefs that discourage suicide. And so you want to tap into that as well. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we talked about a safety plan. Make sure that you remove all weapons, medications. You want to make sure that they are, and put those things away so that they can't get to them. Help them identify signs of crisis so that they know that when they're in that situation, that they can call somebody, they can call you, find ways to take their mind off their problems. And again, have a list for them of who they can call when they are in crisis, whether it's somebody trusted, family, professional, the crisis line, any of those people that they can call for help when they need help. Next slide, please. Recap, what do you do? If you sense something is wrong, don't delay in getting help. You know, find the words to have the conversation, express your concern, and ask them directly, are they thinking about suicide? Next slide. So again, these are the questions we talked about earlier. You should be able to answer these questions now. What are 3 critical warning signs? Should you ask somebody about suicide? Yes, you should. You should know the 3 ways to help someone who is having thoughts of suicide. And then, of course, the 2 suicide prevention resources that are available 24/7 to you. Next slide. And then that is it. I thank you for your time this evening. It has been quite an honor. And I hope you got something out of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taps, for a great presentation. You shared some insight and some tools that I feel that each of us can walk away with and either utilize it for ourselves or for someone who might be thinking of suicide. Before I present our next presenter, I want to pose 2 questions in the chat, and we're going to make this quick, okay? I want you all, the first question is to name 1 warning sign that a person might be thinking of suicide. in the chat, name one warning sign that a person might be thinking about suicide. And then the second question is, name at least one resource that you can either utilize for yourself or for someone else who might be thinking of suicide. And Dr. Taps shared warning signs and she shared resources. So one, a warning sign that a person might be thinking about suicide, and then name one resource that you can either utilize for yourself or for someone else. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Taps, for a great presentation. While you all continue to put that information in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our second presenter for tonight. Her name is Latasha Willis. She's a native of Jackson, Mississippi. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics with an emphasis in computer science from Tougaloo College, an Associates of Science degree in design from the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, a Master of Fine Arts degree in media design from Full Sail University, and a master's degree in informatics from San Jose State University. She is currently pursuing a post-baccalaureate certificate in health informatics from the University of Mississippi School of Health-Related Professions. Latasha desires to normalize conversations about mental health since she views mental health as a part of overall health and should get the same treatment any physical illness, since mental health begins in the brain, the most complex organ in the body. Latasha, I now yield the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Regina. Hello, everyone, and thanks for allowing me to share my story, which I have entitled, Put a Spin on Suicide. The spin I'm referring to is the acrostic poem that will gradually appear on the screen as I give my presentation. I also want to point out that some of what I share may be triggering to some because of the theme, so please take care of yourself if you need to. You may show the first line on the slide. First, my story matters. For someone who has struggled with low self-esteem since childhood, that's a bold statement. However, I realize now that being teased for being an awkward nerd was one of the sources of trauma that led to my negative mindset and self-deprecation. The segue to the anxiety and depression I was diagnosed with in 1998, in a time when mental health wasn't talked about as much as it is now. And I think we still need to talk about it more. The isolation I felt when I had trouble explaining what my panic attacks were like, or why I sometimes didn't feel like getting out of bed in the morning, was overwhelming. As a Generation Xer, you're from an era where you're expected to suck it up, don't whine about it, and keep going. That stuck with me through guilt when I spent a month off work due to a severe panic attack that I believe was a nervous breakdown. I couldn't function well enough to do anything on my own, but yet I beat myself up for not being able to bounce back in a day or two and go back to work. That stayed with me, even when I was able to return to work and was reassigned to a less stressful position. For a few years, I thrived in my new position and I had a good relationship with my team and excelled in the company, but things changed when rumors of layoffs began. I had just moved to a new apartment and I was working a second job and selling makeup to get by. I was afraid of financial ruin. I was also in graduate school and was helping my family out a lot as well. I was tired, but insomnia ruled the night, which meant groggy afternoons, where I occasionally napped in the restroom to get through the rest of the day. Next line, please. In short, I was in undeniable pain. I was constantly worried about my day job because I planned on retiring there, and there was a possibility that I would be walking out the door with a cardboard box at any time. I didn't have an emergency fund or anything like that. And I was afraid of being unable to pay my bills, losing my car, losing my apartment, and so on. I struggled to focus at times, and I pretended to be okay when I was far from it. I didn't plan to take my life in advance, but looking back, I saw warning signs. For example, I had a stuffed animal on my desk that I purchased from the company that I was selling makeup for, and a coworker admired it. And out of the blue, I told her she could have it. Well, I thought it was out of the blue. Giving away possessions is a sign of suicidal ideation, so keep that in mind. One afternoon in January of 2002, I was struggling to function and was suicidal. I messaged a coworker who was also a friend that I needed to talk to her. She said she would get with me when she got off the phone, and as I waited for her, I received a scathing email from someone in another department about a mistake I made on another customer's account. That was when I gave up. I was a perfectionist, so this was the last thing I needed to see in the state of mind I was in. I don't remember everything that happened, but I left my desk, I clocked out, walked across the parking lot, and stood next to the highway with the goal of stepping in front of a vehicle so I could get hit. My timing was off, and as I stepped into traffic, the approaching car stopped before it could hit me. My heart pounded as I stood there and saw that the car was about 2 yards away, and I thought to myself, I can't even kill myself right. I fell to my knees and sobbed as traffic started to back up. A driver in a van got out to see if I was okay, and she and a coworker helped me to stand and get out of the road. I was met with hugs from several coworkers who happened to be outside or heard what happened and left the office to check on me. I was so embarrassed. The friend who I was wanting to speak with offered to take me to church to talk to the pastor since we went to the same church, and I agreed. I honestly don't remember what he told me, but I think it helped. After that, my friend took me to my apartment to grab some clothes, and she took me to a relative's house to spend the night. The next day, I called my therapist, who instructed me to go to the hospital. I was checked into the psychiatric ward for a 72-hour hold, followed by a week of intermediate treatment. And this is when I learned an important lesson. Next line, please. It ain't just me. While I was in the hospital, I befriended the other patients in my unit, and the activities we did together, such as group therapy, arts and crafts, and movie night, opened my eyes to the fact that I wasn't the only person feeling the way that I felt. I felt isolated in my pain, like no one else was going through what I was going through, but that wasn't true. The people I met during my treatment varied in age, gender, race, economic status, spiritual beliefs, you name it. We were all different, yet we were all the same, in that we all struggled with mental health issues, whether it was genetic or brought on by trauma. We had this pain in common, and it was the first time that I didn't feel like a complete weirdo. We all exchanged numbers, and I called to check on them a few months after discharge. Sometimes I look back at the time in my life and I ask myself, why? Why did I take such drastic measures to end it all? What would I have missed if I succeeded? Sometimes I think about my nephew and nieces who were very young then. Would they remember who I was if I was gone? I have a 16-year-old nephew and a 13-year-old niece who I would have never met if I wasn't here. And it's hard to imagine not knowing them. I would have missed my father's 75th birthday, my mother's 70th birthday, my sister's graduation when she earned her second doctoral degree, and so much more. Why did I do what I did? Next line, please. It was time for me to reconcile my actions. What was going on in my mind that led me to decide to end it all? What were the circumstances surrounding the decision? First, I lost hope. Growing up, even though I got picked on for being different, I had hope that the good grades I was getting would lead to success. After finishing undergraduate school with honors, I was disappointed when my lack of job experience meant I would be starting further back than my peers. I did manage to get a good job thanks to a recommendation from someone I knew, and I was awarded for my performance. So my hope was restored until the fear of being laid off took that hope away again. I now realize that I always based success on a score. I wasn't successful without a high score. So what would I have to measure myself with if I didn't have that job? This was rooted in that childhood need to make 100s on my assignments and tests to compensate for not being cool or athletic. Second, I didn't see a way out. I believed in solving problems instead of talking about them. I preferred to spring into action to figure out how to fix an issue and get my life back to normal again. But I didn't see an easy fix, and my pride wouldn't let me admit that I couldn't fix it on my own. I have always been fiercely independent and self-reliant, and I avoided asking anyone to do anything for me unless I had no choice. If I were laid off, that would change, and I wasn't ready. Third, I was just plain tired. I was tired of fighting, tired of thinking, and tired of being tired. I wanted a break, but didn't see how to get one. They didn't talk about mental health days in the early 2000s. I had been on a leave of absence before and didn't want to do it again because I didn't want people to think I was weak. I didn't want anyone to question my ability to work. And yet I still got that needed break with that suicide attempt, which led me to this. Next line, please. I had to decide to live. Why? Because statistically speaking, a person who attempts suicide and survives is more likely to try again than someone who has never attempted before. When my back is against the wall and things get rough, I must make a conscious decision to stay here because that little nasty voice in the back of my head pops up every now and then to tell me if I were gone, I wouldn't have to deal with this. However, I remember the tears in my younger sister's eyes when she embraced me and asked me why I tried to take my life. I remember my 9-year-old nephew crying when my older sister brought him and my 3-year-old niece to see me in the hospital, and I couldn't leave when they left. I think about how my youngest niece would always ask me for a piece of gum, and there was a possibility that she would have never met me. I think about other places I've worked where I was able to make a difference. And most of all, I think about how I found out about NAMI a year after my suicide attempt and became a member the following year. What if I knew about resources such as NAMI and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline before January of 2002? Would I have made different choices? Yes, I was in therapy, but I wasn't comfortable talking about it openly for fear of being judged. And I stopped taking my medication because I thought that willpower would be enough to keep me going. I realize now that mental health stigma is what kept me from consistently taking care of myself and eventually caused me to no longer want to exist because I wasn't what I thought was the ideal person. Now that I understand my story better and have been open about it, I sometimes wondered how people view me for sharing it. Would they think I was unstable and couldn't be trusted? Would my mental health story prevent me from being a community leader? Well, no. And here's why. Next line, please. In the process of becoming a mental health advocate, I learned to cast doubt aside about my history and use it as a catalyst to raise awareness about mental health in general and suicide awareness specifically. I have firsthand experience of the thought process that leads to the decision to attempt suicide, the trance-like state I was in during the attempt, the disturbing feelings after the attempt, and the recovery process. I learned how to use my story through the NAMI In Our Own Voice program to share with the community what my recovery journey is like and how I'm taking care of myself now. And I'm now a state trainer to help others like me learn how to share their story. I learned about coping skills, relaxation techniques, and setting goals through the NAMI peer-to-peer education course. And I am now a leader who teaches classes and a state trainer who trains others like me to lead classes. I became a member of the NAMI Central Mississippi affiliate 20 years ago. I became the vice president during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I became the president 2 years ago. During my 7-year tenure as peer community outreach specialist for NAMI's Mississippi State Office, which ended in February, I helped the staff and affiliates throughout the state with graphic design, web, social media, and IT needs. If someone told me in January 2002 that I'll be doing all this for a mental health nonprofit, I probably wouldn't believe it. If anyone is wondering if I'm bragging on myself, yes, I am. As someone who battled low self-esteem throughout her life, and remembering the fact that I could have missed out on doing any of this by leaving this world at the age of 27, I need to look at my highlight reel every now and then. But it's not just for me. It's for anyone like me who is either a suicide attempt survivor or who has contemplated suicide in the past. And I'm an example that you could turn your life around, which leads me to this final point. Next line, please. Have empathy. If you don't understand why someone would consider or attempt suicide, put yourself in that person's shoes for just a moment. Has that person experienced mental health issues, trauma, stress, or overwhelm? No, you may not know the answer to that, but just imagine that the person may have experienced one of those things. Now, use your imagination again. Is the pain undeniable? If you want the pain to stop and didn't see a way to do it that didn't involve leaving this earth, what would you want someone to say to you? Would you tell them to snap out of it? Would you tell them they're a bad person or in sin? Would you tell them that it's not that serious? Yes, you could tell them that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, but if they believe that the temporary problem is permanent, that may not help. Meet them where they are. Ask the person if they're contemplating suicide. Ask them if they have a plan, a means, and a time, how, with what, and when. Offer to help them get help by calling 988 or your county's mobile crisis unit. Offer to accompany them to counseling. And most of all, after the crisis is over, don't disappear. Casseroles aren't just for people with broken legs. People getting over a mental health crisis need to eat too. So everything I'm telling you right now is everything that I wish was done for me. So in closing, I encourage you to go to NAMI.org to learn more about suicide prevention. Save 988 in your phone just in case. Find the mobile crisis unit phone number for your county and save that too. Take a mental health first aid course and get involved with your local mental health organizations. The more we sound the alarm about suicide, the more lives we will save. Thank you.
Presentation, Ms. Willis. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think this is the second time I've heard your story, and each time I hear it, I still get chills. So thank you so much. And it's so necessary that more people are transparent about their journey. And yes, your story, it matters. So thank you for making the decision to live, because your story is going to help so many people in need. One of the things I wanted to say before we move on to our next presenters is the fact that we have to be gentle. Every morning we should get up with an expectation to be gentle with somebody, because even the strongest person suffers in silence. You never know what someone may be facing, and your harsh words, your attitude, you walking around like life doesn't matter, could be the very thing that pushes someone over the edge. So we have actions. So before I move on to the next presenter, so thank you again, Ms. Willis, for sharing your story. But before I move on, I want to pose a question in the chat right quick. How can we support someone contemplating suicide? How can you support them? Ms. Willis just gave some ideas, so I just want to make sure that you are listening. So how can you support someone who might be contemplating suicide? And as those, I see a lot of empathy. I see a lot of listening. Never leave them. Be present. Yes, be present. Somebody said be direct with the conversation. Okay, so you all keep putting that information in the chat, and I'm going to move on to seeing our next three counselors. And so just be patient with me for just a second while I give a brief bio for each one of them. So our first presenter is Miss Sarita Griffith Washington. She's a mental health counselor at the Latasha Norman Center for Counseling Services. She's a proud native of Jackson, Mississippi. She's a proud alumni of Jackson State University, pursuing degrees in social work and community counseling. Ms. Washington's passion for mental health and wellness, along with her love for student interactions, inspired her to provide services in the Latasha Norman Center. She has been blessed and anointed to guide students throughout their self-building journey and watch them blossom into beautiful flowers here at the university. She is a devoted wife, daughter, friend, and employee. Ms. Washington reaffirms the belief that the future generation will judge us by what we say, but by what we do. Our second presenter is Ms. Laquana Sistrom. She's the Director of Counseling and Accessibility Services at Tougaloo College. Her path to social work began within the foster care system. She cultivated a deep determination to transform personal adversities into victories. Raised in the foster care and later adopted, the challenges and traumas she faced became the fuel for her resilience and her commitment to helping others. She earned her bachelor's degree at Mississippi Valley State University and later completed her master's degree at the University of Southern Miss. In 2019, she achieved licensure, and her journey as a therapist has taken her across diverse settings, from clinics to universities and even within the prison systems. Her passion lies in guiding young adults and individuals from all walks of life through difficult moments, whether it's grief, anxiety, trauma, or depression. She collaborates with her clients to help them unlock their inherent strengths and achieve their therapeutic goals. And our last presenter is Ms. Sheila Thomas. She's a social worker with Jackson Public School District for 18 years. She has worked in community mental health as a program director, therapist, and counselor. She has 25 years of experience in working with youth and families to serve the whole child and impact their environment. She believes that everyone, no matter their circumstances, deserve a chance to be great and potential. When she's not working, she enjoys crafting, aromatherapy, and traveling. So these are our presenters for our next session. So Ms. Washington, I now turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I am Sarita Washington, and it is an honor to speak with you today as we acknowledge National Suicide Awareness Month, which is acknowledged within the month of September. So once again, I serve as one of the mental health counselors at Jackson State University at the Latasha Norman Center for Counseling Services. And just a brief background on the center, the Latasha Norman Center for Counseling Services was named in honor of Latasha Norman herself. Latasha Norman was a junior accounting major, a student at JSU, and she was from Greenville, Mississippi. Unfortunately, Miss Norman was involved in a domestic violent relationship. She actually ended up leaving the relationship. However, unfortunately, her estranged partner ended up taking her life. So, in honor of her and to commemorate Miss Norman, the counseling center was named in honor of her. And so, it is just an honor to be a part of the mission at the Latasha Norman Center to spread awareness on domestic violence, human trafficking, stalking, teen dating violence. So we like to spread the light on those current issues that are plaguing our nation. So the Latasha Norman Center offers free mental health counseling for students at Jackson State University. We offer individual counseling as well as group counseling. We provide Latasha Norman Center programming of events open to the campus and the community. So we just encourage all students to take advantage of the services that we have to offer and just come in and check in with themselves. And we tell them, even if they're doing okay, it's nothing wrong with coming in and checking in with yourself. You deserve that. So I would like to provide some resources that the Latasha Norman Center offers to students. Let's see here. Outside resources is Infusion Metro. That is an external mental health resource for students that we have partnered with, and they specialize in working with college age students. It is a free service, and they're located right here in Jackson, fortunately. We also have the United Health Clinic. That is a new programming initiative as well through the University of Mississippi Medical Center. And once again, that is a free telehealth service. So we are very excited about that option as well. Once again, virtual. We also have Positive Pathways Behavioral Health LLC. That is another external resource that we utilize. Of course, Hines Behavioral Health Services, located right here in Jackson, Mississippi, and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Next slide, please. Additional Latasha Norman resources are the Mississippi Department of Mental Health, BetterHelp, betterhelp.com, NAMI, of course, the National Information Helpline, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, as well as the Latasha Norman Center for Counseling Services. Next slide. Well, I believe that is the final slide. Okay, let's see here. Okay, great. Yes. Mississippi Department of Mental Health, BetterHelp, NAMI, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the Latasha Norman Center. So those are all of the resources that I have to share with you all today. And once again, I just wanted to reiterate that it is very important to provide a non-judgmental and safe space to someone who is experiencing deep pain. Everyone deals with their own struggles differently. Everyone handles their own pain differently. So if you or someone that you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts, you never want them to feel guilty or crazy for this. You never want to ignore or minimize their pain. What may be frivolous or not so big of a deal to you could be very, very serious to someone else. So you just want to pretty much offer them love, support, and a listening ear along with these resources that I have shared with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Washington, for your information and especially those resources. So I just want to do we ahead of time. So I just have to do this, okay? I want you all to put in the chat. She listed some additional resources. What are some of those resources that you could share with someone who might be in need, not just around suicide, but somebody who might be facing anxiety, depression, anything like that, who might just need somebody to talk to? She shared, I think it was 4 or 5 additional resources outside of the Latasha Norman Center. Hines Behavioral Health. And then also we have to keep in mind too that when you're making referrals for someone, or you're trying to guide them in the right to the right place for help, know exactly what resources are out there, and especially for someone who might not have health insurance, what free resources or sliding scale services are out there for someone who might be in need of mental health services. So it's good to really research resources that are out there for someone who might be facing some form of mental illness. I now want to yield the floor to Sister.
Hello, hello. Hey, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And of course, being here for a good cause with my own sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So I'm just super excited to be here and represent Tougaloo College, and just to give you all some information about what we do there. So I'll go to the first slide. So the Office of Counseling and Accessibility Services, which was changed on last year from the Office of Counseling and ADA Compliance. In our office, we handle counseling services. We also handle assisting our students who have a form of disability, seen or unseen. And then we also handle zero tolerance, which is the 4 crimes that was spoken before. So we do a lot of things within our office. We provide free and confidential, short-term, solution-focused, individual and group counseling services to our students. We aim to serve as a resource for our students. We also want to be a resource for our faculty and our staff, because they also have moments when they have some emotional concerns and they need assistance. So we don't just offer services to our students, but we also make sure that we reach out to our faculty and staff to ensure that their mental needs are taken care of. So some mental health contacts that we have in our office is me, of course. I'm available Monday through Friday. I'm also available in any emergency situations, also an emergency on call on the weekend. So as you see, I have my office number and I also have my cell phone number that was provided by Tougaloo College to ensure that we are always there when our students need us. We also have our phenomenal other individuals that assist in my office, which is Dr. Lewis. She is a part of Tamar Counseling Group. She provides counseling to most of our students that have had an interpersonal crime on campus. But at times, some of our students may want a more intimate after hours situation where nobody sees them getting that service, and they may have not have experienced an interpersonal crime. So she also provides those services to our students after hours on Mondays and Thursdays from 4 to 8 o'clock. And also you see her number is there, and those services are also free thanks to OVW, who provided us some funding so that we can provide that to our students. And then we have Geraldine Bates. She is with Central Mississippi Health Services Incorporated. That's a part of the Owens Health and Wellness Center that we have on campus, where she's available on Tuesdays all day and on Fridays in the morning time. And that is her phone number there. So students may not want to see us, right? So we have gave our students an opportunity because they may not have transportation, they may not be able to get to someone off of campus. So we have that provided for us right in our home with the Owens Health Wellness Center. And then we have our chaplain, Larry Johnson. So it may be students or maybe individuals that want to take a more religious approach to their mental health. And so we have him there as a religious and spiritual life counselor. So those are our mental health services, which are free to our students right on Tougaloo campus. So we're going to go to the next slide and just talk about some of the things that we have as far as emergency contacts, what we do when an emergency happens on Tougaloo campus, and how we ensure that our students are safe. So let's think about if a student says that they want to harm themselves or kill themselves, and they tell their residential coordinator. And so in that moment, they're going to call public safety. They're going to call public safety, and then they're going to call me. And so I'm going to head to campus to assess that student, because even sometimes people think that when they say I want to kill myself, that that's what they really want to do. Sometimes that is not the case. Sometimes we have to assess because it could have been something else and they really didn't really mean that, right? So I come in because they call public safety. Public safety gonna do safety first. You going to the hospital. Well, I'm gonna come in to assess to ensure that is this the referral that this student needs right now? Because we don't want to do a intensive referral to a student and then we messed up all type of rapport with them and everything. So we want to make sure that we're doing the appropriate assessment to get them to their next level of care. So if their next level of care is to go to a higher level of care, we will contact the hospital if they're in agreement. But some students don't want to go. They're like, nope, I'm not going. Well, we're going to have to do something else, right? So that's what we call Hines Comprehensive Health Mobile Crisis Unit, okay? Because they're going to come in and they're going to help us ensure that we get the student that doesn't want to be cooperative. They said that they want to kill themselves, and they said that they're going to do it to make sure they get safely to where they need to go. So just a few other things that we have on here is the Crisis Intervention Services, Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, 988, which is 24 hours, Mississippi Department of Mental Health, Crisis Suicide Line, in Spanish also, because we have individuals, we got to make sure that we're inclusive, right? I'm also the Office of Accessibility, and I'm always making sure and advocating that we are inclusive and ensuring that everybody is feeling seen, heard, and a part of what's happening. Then we have Hines Behavioral Health Services Mobile Crisis Hotline, National Alcohol and Drug Outline, just to put a little other things in there because some of our students be turning up and they be needing that assistance, right? And then we have the Mississippi Coalition Against Sexual Assault, because we want to have extra support just in case. And if we are not available, you can always call our public safety police on campus or the Jackson City Police Department that is in the Hines County area. So I hope I have given you all some little tips, some little information, and some gems on what Tougaloo College is doing for our scholars, because they are important to us. And I just want to leave y'all with a quote. If you're looking for a sign to not kill yourself, this is it. All right. Thank y'all.
Strong. Thank you so much for a great. I love your energy. I love your energy. Thank you so much for a great presentation. And Tougaloo is doing some great things as it relates to being there, being supportive to their students, and not just the students. I heard you say even the faculty and the staff, because you never know who is going through something. Even the strongest person suffers in silence. So thank you so much, Ms. Sister.
You're
I want to
welcome.
pose. Well, I want to pose another question in the chat, and I'm not for sure if the other presenters touched on this, but Ms. Sistrunk just did. What are or name at least one crisis mobile unit that will come to you if a person is in crisis? And it doesn't just have to be on a college campus. It could be at a person's home. It could be at the mall, in a restaurant. If you know of someone who's facing a mental health crisis, name at least one mobile crisis unit that you can contact. Yep, Hines Behavioral Health. I've seen Jackson Hines Comprehensive Health, Tamar, Region 8. Yes, it's good for us to know this, that if a person is in crisis, not everyone is going to say, yes, I get to the hospital or go to some form of a mental health clinic to seek services. Some people are going to push against that. Some people are going to say no. And if you know for sure that that person is at risk of harming themselves, then you need to know that these resources are available to you for someone who might be in need. And so I'm going to yield the floor to our last presenter, Ms. Sheila Thomas. You now have the floor.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This has been so informative and so much needed, especially in our community. So I want you to know that there is always hope. No matter what someone may be going through, there's always hope as long as there is support. Next slide, please. So I'm going to touch on some things that some people have mentioned. I think it's never too much for us to continue to repeat because the many times we hear it, as many times we may be able to use it. So some risk factors for suicide can be personal, environmental. Some of the other speakers spoke on that. The young lady who talked about her experience with possibly losing her job and losing her independence, that was all a part of that as well. All of those things can be associated with suicide or suicide thoughts. The environment, cultural environment, where we come from, the physical environment, losing a home, becoming homeless. All of those things really make a difference for some people. And some people may be affected by one or more factors that can cause them to contemplate or think some of these things. And as she said before, previous suicide attempts or previous suicide thoughts can sometimes bring about people having that thought again. And we have to make sure that people are convinced to be decided to live. Okay, next slide. So where do you get help? So I work for Jackson Public Schools and I work for the school-based mental health grant. It is a new grant. We're in our second year, and it was so appealing to me to work there because we have students who really are in need of help after COVID, the isolation, family issues, grief issues, trauma that people experience. We just saw a lot of more students that needed more individual help and more individual counseling. So in a school building, where can a student get help? We want them to tell anyone. They can get them to the right person. You might not be the person who can help them if you're a teacher, if you're a counselor who doesn't feel comfortable with that, or if you're the cafeteria person, but there's somebody else in that building that can help them. Just make sure they get to that right person. So several people can help: teachers, counselors, school support staff, office staff, cafeteria staff, janitorial staff. You would be surprised who the kids talk to. So what we need them to do is when they're talking, we need to get them to somebody who can listen and who can also help and provide services and support. It could also be a security officer. The security officers at the school that I work with, they're very in tune and in touch with the kids because of what they have to do every day. So sometimes they get to hear some stuff and we get referrals from them all the time. We just want people to feel comfortable and to be able to talk so they're able to get help. So I tell kids all the time, talk to somebody, anybody who you feel safe with. And if they're not sure who to talk to, and if you as a parent aren't sure if your child is expressing some things, call the school, ask for some help and assistance if you don't have a provider that's already in the community. We're more than willing to help. We're more than willing to make referrals. We have people on site, the middle and high school, have people that are on site every day that can provide assessments. It's free of charge, doesn't cost anything. And we can just make sure that our students are safe and well taken care of. Next slide, please. So 988, this is so important. And you're gonna hear this. I know you've seen it already, but it's so important. They said texting. That's what our students love to do. They will text. If they don't talk, they will text. And when they text the 988 number, it's a national number, but guess what they have? Somebody who has resources that connects them to Mississippi, to Jackson, so they can get to somebody that's hands-on with them that can provide some help and support. And I tell them all the time, if you need help and someone to talk to, this is a great number to call if you don't feel comfortable with an individual, because there is still such a stigma. And then depending on high school students, you know, some high school, middle school, and now we're seeing even elementary school children, depending on your approach with them, they feel judged, and so they're shut down and they won't talk. So if they have as many venues as they can so that they can contact an adult, a caring adult, that's wonderful. Next slide, next slide. So if you know somebody that's in crisis, here's the number again. I know we have seen that also. It is so important that we give people as many opportunities to seek out help as is possible, because somebody might utilize one, might utilize both. Or they might give the information to a friend. For adolescents, we know that they share information with each other. They will help each other. Years ago, we had a grant through a Department of Mental Health called Signs of Suicide. And the first time I did the project with the group of students, I got so many referrals from kids that were not even in my school who needed help and assistance. And we were able to provide that help and assistance to those students to make sure that everybody was safe. Next slide. So, as I said, there's always hope. We just want kids to know that after a storm, there is always a rainbow. Sometimes we can see it. Sometimes it's bright visible, but sometimes we have to look a little bit deeper. So we have to help them to remember that there's always a rainbow, no matter what they're going through. And we're there to provide care, concern, and support, because those are the most important things when you're going through your information. Care, concern, and support. That's it again. At the end of each storm, there's always a rainbow. Sometimes it's more visible. We just have to remember to look. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. Thank you. One of the things, and I'm so glad that you are able to present tonight, because one of the things that came to mind is that sometimes we as adults think that um, when a child or a student is acting out, or making statements of them wanting to commit suicide, they just want attention, there's nothing wrong with them, that type of stuff. And it takes me back to a young girl who completed suicide a couple of years ago, and it always made me think about what was going in her mind. How do we miss the signs? So many people around her, students, friends, teachers, staff. How did we miss the signs, and how we could have helped this young lady? And so knowing that, these are the resources that you all are now providing in the school systems, knowing again what resources out there, letting these students know that there's help, people care, people want to make sure that you get the right help, is so important. So thank you so much for your presentation tonight. So we are 17 minutes or 10 minutes ahead, 8-10 minutes ahead of time. And so I know you all have some burning questions. I know you do. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the chat, answer your questions. And so I'm going to go to the first question I see is, does dialing 988 store and bank the number dialing from? And so any presenter can chime in and answer this question.
To my knowledge, if someone does call and make an ideation, if they say that if they're in imminent danger, it does bank the information and they will send some assistance. So
Okay,
yes, technically yes.
Thank you. Thank you. There's an, okay, I'm answering the questions in the Q&A first, and then I'm gonna go to the chat and I'm gonna ask those questions. Sean Smith wanted to know, is there ongoing funding for mental health facilities like our HBCUs, health or mental health centers? Does this funding equal other institutions? How does the state of Mississippi compare? And so I'm going to yield the floor to one of our presenters.
So I'm gonna just I'm gonna just say something historically. We know that our communities has always been underfunded for everything. We're starting to get more funds, and as mental health is broadened across the nation, they're starting to put additional funds out. So we know with each administration, it changes. Different funding levels, different funding sources, different funding reasons. It's kind of like what's important to the next person is what gets funded. I'm sorry, but that's unfortunately what it is. So it just changes and it just depends. But that is why it is important to call your legislature. If you have a program that is working in your community and it sounds like they're about to cut it, call and say something, write a letter, advocate for yourself. Because if we don't stand up and say something, they will do whatever it is that they're going to do when it comes to the next thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Next question is, additionally, what is the best way to differentiate between someone making a shift in bettering their mental health and their mood improving due to that, and the overall warning sign of a sudden uplift in mood? So I'm gonna yield it to one of our presenters.
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry, I missed some of it.
I'm sorry, let me go back. It just says, additionally, what is the best way to differentiate, and I probably chopped the word up, between someone making a shift in bettering their mental health and their mood improving due to that, and the overall warning sign of a sudden uplift in mood?
The difference is that when someone makes a movement to better their mental health, they're actually in therapy. They're actually seeing a provider that may prescribe some medication to help better their mood. So it is a gradual progression versus someone who has not been in therapy or who has not taken the step to get them some help and all of a sudden they feel better. That's the difference. So working on it and doing the work to get better is gradual versus the situation doesn't change, they're not making any progression, and then all of a sudden they're just happy. So there's a great difference in the two.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taps.
Yes, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add to what she was stating as well. That is very correct. If a person is untreated, mental illness or suicidal ideations that has not been treated, and all of a sudden there's like this elevated, almost euphoric mood, all of a sudden just out of nowhere, that's definitely a red flag, something that you do want to be on the lookout for.
Thank you. Thank you. There's another question in the Q&A. The first panelist mentioned taking drugs being a warning sign of suicidal intentions. Wouldn't the I'm trying to answer your question. When mental health that also parallels the use of drugs count as a risk factor as well as being a warning sign, such as someone who uses drugs is more likely to commit suicide than someone who does not.
So the
And
actual
the
use,
question is, okay, go
the,
ahead.
the actual drug use is not an actual warning sign that somebody is going to commit suicide. Many people use drugs. Though the critical warning sign of someone using drugs is the increase of substance use, which usually is especially alcohol. So if someone is using drugs, that is not a true indicator that they are going to attempt or die by suicide. It is just when, especially someone who doesn't use as much, and all of a sudden now there is an escalation, an increase in whatever substance use they're using, and you'll see an increase in alcohol, which is a depressant in itself. That is the trigger, the warning sign for the that may be a suicidal ideations for those people. But the actual use of drugs is not necessarily a risk factor or a warning sign for a suicidal ideation.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Taps. I see one more question. Are pastors licensed professionals?
Well, I'll go. Are you meaning licensed counselors or therapists? Or I mean, I think pastors have some sort of licensure to be a pastor, but as far as being a professional counselor or a therapist, unless they have actually gone to college and taken a certification test that says that they are licensed to counsel or treat or anything like that, I think that's the difference in that. I think pastors do counsel from a Christian standpoint, but from a professional standpoint, that person would have to have a license or a certification to do so.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And then I see a question that says, what are medications, or what are some medications that can increase risk of suicidal thought?
So with medications, all medications have side effects, but some of your antidepressants do have a black label warning, especially for teenagers, that they can increase suicidal thoughts. And so that has to be told to anyone that you are prescribing any kind of antidepressant to, especially your younger children, that is a possibility that the suicidal thoughts may increase, or that they may even start to have some suicidal thoughts. And so you have to make sure that they know the signs and the symptoms and the risk factors of those medications and what to look for in their loved ones.
Okay, thank you. And then I see we're going to take two more questions. How do suicide rates among Blacks, specifically Black women, compare to other cultures? Also, does the probability of suicide rates increase if someone already has an existing mental illness or diagnosis?
I didn't want to answer all the questions.
Go for it.
So any population is at risk or can have suicidal ideations or attempt suicide, but your most riskier populations are going to be your Native Americans, your Caucasians, your men, especially white men, and your perfectionists, and things like that. So Black women do attempt suicide, and some have died by suicide. However, they are at a lower rate than the other populations. And what was the other question?
I see another question that says, if there is time, I would love to hear what are some of the most impactful moments in the line of work of all of the panelists, if you all are able to share.
I would like to share just being acknowledged by students who were previous clients of yours, just observing their progression and them coming back to thank you, especially those who are about to graduate or who have graduated, and them coming back and making contact with you just to thank you and just to let you know how much you were able to inspire them and help them, and them just informing you about their progress and how the counseling services that they received assisted them in the successful matriculation at the university. I think that that's one of the biggest rewards in the world. Just them personally coming to you, some become emotional, and just letting you know how much of a beacon that you were towards their successful achievement.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Did anyone else want to answer that?
Yes. So I'll speak about one of the younger people that was that I worked with at the prison, and how she was going to Hines Community College in the prison system. And so, to work with her and to help her navigate some of her toughest moments, especially inside of the prison system, and to see her get out and actually get her associate's degree, and now she's getting her bachelor's degree at Jackson State University. Those are the moments that you say, okay, job well done, job well done. I didn't have to get a pat up. Nobody had to know about that. Nobody had to give me, but it's to see her succeed. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Anybody else before I answer the last two questions before we close out? Okay, so I'm gonna ask this question, and I feel like this is an important question. How can a caregiver take care of their own mental health supporting someone at risk?
I would say it's important for caregivers to check in with themselves. It is important for them to be aware uh, of their limits and just asking themselves, okay, do I need to speak with someone? How am I feeling? Is this becoming a bit too much for me? Do I need to reach out to someone? Because being a caregiver, it can become rather stressful. It can become taxing mentally, physically. So checking in with yourself, speaking with someone, a trustworthy person that you can share some of your stressors with, and just being transparent with someone that you trust, that you feel safe with, not beating up on yourself or feeling the way that you may feel, and just being open to talking with someone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And this is the last. If you're from JSU, are the counseling services still available to you or strictly just outside resources?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It says, if you are a recent graduate from JSU, are the counseling services still available to you or strictly just outside services?
Right now, strictly just outside services. However, we would definitely offer a lending hand and be a backing support when it comes to the referral process. So if there is anyone who is interested in seeking counseling services upon graduation, we would definitely provide that backing support for them. And I noticed that someone did ask if JSU provided counseling services to faculty and staff. Fortunately, JSU did enroll in the ADP program for employees, and they do have available counseling services with that particular platform. And we also offer in-person referral external resources as well.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What an incredible webinar this has been. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, we've covered so many valuable insights, and I hope everyone finds something useful that will positively impact you and those around you. Our goal tonight was for you all to not just live, but to live well. And if you need help, please know that help is available to you. All you have to do is reach out and ask. Now, it is my pleasure to hand things over to the remarkable President Nakisha Davis of the Jackson Miss Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. I yield the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lewis, and great evening, everyone. Before I bring this awesome program to a close on this evening, I absolutely must give a grand and huge thank you to all of our presenters tonight, to Dr. Taps, to Ms. Willis, Ms. Griffith-Washington, Ms. Sistrunk, Ms. Thomas. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight your knowledge, your expertise, and even a powerful story that we have heard tonight. As we come to a close of this suicide prevention awareness webinar, I want to thank each of you for being here, for your openness and your commitment to making a difference. We have shared vital information tonight, but the work does not stop here. Suicide prevention is a journey that requires ongoing compassion, vigilance, and support. Let us remember that every life matters, and even the smallest acts of kindness and understanding can have profound impact on someone who may be struggling. Together, we can break the stigma, create safe places, and offer hope to those that need it most. If you or someone you know is in need of help, please reach out. There are resources and people ready to listen and support you. You are never alone. Thank you for being a part of this crucial conversation tonight. Let us continue to work together to spread awareness, offer hope, and save lives. To the community, stay connected, stay kind, and stay hopeful. Have a great night. Those of you who are remaining, we do ask that you please complete the evaluation form using the QR code on the screen. Thank you, and again, have a wonderful night.
As a reminder, a recording of this session will be made available on the JMAC YouTube page.